Welcome to the start of a new season for the Premier Ultimate League. Alongside Saul Yannick, I am Daniel Prentice, high atop Durham County Memorial Stadium. We have a fun one here this afternoon. The defending champion Raleigh Radiance playing host to the team that they knocked off in semifinals, Washington, D.C. Shadow. Should be an excellent matchup this afternoon between two of the top teams in the league. And this game, as all games of the Premier League, sponsored by Discraft. The Discraft Ultra Star is the official disc of the Premier Ultimate League. Discraft, the world leader in disc sports. Live broadcast of the Premier Ultimate League is brought to you by Breakmark Ultimate Apparel. Go to breakmark.com to place your next custom team order or check the PUL Athlete collab shops. We'd also like to take a quick moment to shout out our local sponsors. If you are a local corporate sponsor, please stand up and give a wave or say hello in the live chat. I'd like to thank Lori Marcy Real Estate, Geet Street Discs, O2 Fitness, Sue Digital Media, Hannah Day Photography, Select PT, and the Carolina Flyers. Thank you so much for your generosity in helping bring this game live to you on YouTube. Saul, very high-profile matchup, two of the teams that we expect to be playoff contenders deep in the season, but it's the season opener. What do you expect for in this one?
Yeah, Daniel, I expect obviously a super high caliber of game. These are two very familiar groups. They're playing against one another and in some cases with one another, going back and forth between teams over the last 2 or 3 years, both in the PUL and in the USAU club season. So I expect no secrets between the two teams, and I expect some feeling out to start in terms of figuring out where players are deployed in terms of lines. But more than anything, I expect two teams expecting a tough challenge and a welcome one early in the season.
We mentioned that the Radiants are coming off a league title a season ago. The only team in the league currently that has won a PUL championship. But this team is quite a bit different from last year, so a lot of roster turnover, a lot of young players that folks at home may not be familiar with. New head coach as well, as Bridget Johnson takes over. Was an assistant coach last year, now at the helm for the team. Are there any players who maybe on the Raleigh side that people don't know that you might think will have a stamp on this game?
Yeah, I think fans at home are going to know a lot of familiar names on this roster. One interesting thing about this Radiant season is they've got more travel players than previous seasons, and a few of those names are, for one, Paige Carver. Paige previously playing with Atlanta in the PUL and playing a lot with Ozone in the club division, so she's very familiar with this Raleigh team, mostly from the other side. One other name I want to highlight would be Maddie Pletsky, who previously played in Cleveland and for the Columbus Pride in the PUL. So those are two of a number of different travel players and new additions to the roster that we can expect to see big things from today. Both bring a lot of athleticism, a lot of attacking movement down the field, which I think is going to be a noted strength for this Radiance roster up and down.
On the other side, Washington, D.C. Shadow. It's so easy, Saul, to connect these PUL franchises with the club teams of the same area, of course. A lot of these elite teams, you see a lot of roster overlap. And I think for this, the DC women's scene last year was a year of being so close and coming up just short. And in the PUL, DC Shadow lost this Radiance team in a really close one, 18-16 in the semifinal. And then the club team, Washington, D.C. Scandal, losing in the title game. How do you think that kind of loss, being so close, can fuel a team, or are they even thinking about that, this at the start of the season?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but maybe they don't necessarily feel this way, but personally, I view them as a favorite, both in club and in pro, any given season, just based on their roster, both the names and also the way that those names have grown. So, for example, I think about someone like Allie Wallace, who's obviously known for being a very tall player, and she's usually deployed on the D-line, and she has a huge mark, but she's a player who's grown a lot in rounding out her game over the last few years, and that's just one example of a trend for that entire roster who's really evolved their games as a group, and that puts them in that position of making club finals, being the number one seed at PUL Championship weekend, and, you know, for better or for worse, like, they come into this season with high expectations just because they know how good they can be, and there's very few teams they haven't beaten over the last couple of seasons.
It always is so fun opening day, isn't it? Just every possibility is out there for every single team, especially these two. I mean, two teams that should be title contenders right up until playoff weekend. As we get a good look at the fans out at the crowd. Beautiful day here today, Saul, but it is a little windy at times, perhaps even blustery, you might say. Do you think it'll be that big of an impact? As the team who deals with the wind better, the team is going to end up on top today?
Yeah, certainly wind affecting a lot of throws and warm-ups today. I expect the wind to die down by the end of the game as the sun goes down, but Durham County Stadium has just very consistently has a swirly wind in the mid-afternoon, and that's what we're seeing so far today. Both teams repping a lot of throws going laterally across the field, so I think first and foremost we can expect those throws to be a high priority for both, just maintaining possession, putting the disc into a powerful position for the offense with a high level of efficiency.
Consistently a swirly wind. That's not typically what I'm hoping for.
Every single day you can expect the swirly wind.
So do you think the wind is something like, is that going to be advantage for Radiance then? Since they, on the home field, perhaps a little bit more used to those conditions than DC?
It's a good question. I don't think either of these teams come from stereotypically windy areas. The Atlantic Coast and Southeast generally have limited wind, so I think it'll be a genuine new challenge for both groups to encounter both new defense and also new conditions, and we'll see quickly which team is more ready for it, I think.
Seeing both teams getting announced and heading to the center of the field. So not too long from the opening poll now. DC Shadow will be in white. The flip has occurred. I have to admit I was more engaged in what Saul had to say about the wind than the result of the flip, but we should have that information for you before too long.
I think I can confidently say that the Shadow won the flip. I don't really know what
they
selected, but their sideline seemed fired up about it.
Okay. And the Radiance there will be in red, the hometown colors.
For all the fans at home, our Radiance is a group of cardinals, and the cardinal is the state bird of North Carolina. Hence the red jerseys, and hence the team name.
Yeah, and really the whole iconography of the whole team, which great theming, I have to say. But it's really lame in my opinion. As a non-native North Carolina, maybe you feel differently than this, Saul, that the state bird of North Carolina is a cardinal. I think the cardinal is the state bird of like 5 or 6 different states.
Well, I didn't know that until today, so I'm pretty disappointed.
Yeah, I feel like every state should have to have a unique state bird. I mean, maybe there aren't any unique birds. Native Floridian here. Do you want to guess what the state bird of Florida is?
Oof. The one that I'm frying up right now.
Yeah.
No idea.
So you would think it would be like the flamingo or something, right?
I was thinking the pelican.
Or the pelican, which is Louisiana's state bird. I don't know why I know all these state bird facts, but it is a good time filler here as we're trying to stall for the opening poll of the game. It's the mockingbird, which is also the state bird of like 6 different states, which I've never understood. There was actually a couple of years ago a movement at the state legislature level to try to make the state bird the flamingo, and it did not succeed. But yeah, I have always appreciated the Radiance for the theming of the team, especially as it was a tie-in with the Flyers, tying in with the partner program on the men's semi-pro side. So both teams in their final pregame huddles now, so should be any minute for the opening pull. So, as a player, you've played in the one-off game format for quite a while as well in the pro leagues. Is it any different getting fired up for a single game than it is for getting fired up, for that first game of a tournament format?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. A lot of people are very used to the tournament format where you sort of play your first game, you try to get up for your first game, but then you sort of hit that sort of plateau of like elevated focus and energy that you get throughout a day at a tournament with that energy surrounding you. And I think you have to sort of manufacture that for yourself a lot more in the pro setting. In addition, you only have one opponent, so there's an interesting balance of making sure you're optimally prepared for that opponent while also keeping your focus internal and getting yourself to your best mental space. And that looks different for different players.
Sure. Just an interesting format change, with the one-off games. I do think that as a spectator, the one game format is favorable. You get to have these crowds, the games, and every single game, which is great for atmosphere and everything. Mm-hmm. And it does look like the Radiance will be starting on defense. Chena Tickham with the disc, who will be pulling to get us started. So it'll be DC on offense. Get a good look at their high-powered starting unit on the line. Headlined by one Claire Trope in the middle there.
Yeah, I think Claire Trope is a player worth noting before the game. Obviously, World Games player a couple of seasons ago, Team USA selection this year. Just sort of household name at this point, and I think more than anything, Claire's well-rounded game and sort of multifaceted way that she attacks the defense is the thing that makes her most dangerous. You push her under, she's a talented thrower. You push her away, she's got wheels for days, and she can jump with the best of them. So, whoever gets that assignment, they better be ready to work for long points because Claire's got a motor like no other.
No easy matchups on that Scandal O-line, to be fair. Or Shadow, sorry. I told Saul I was going to do that all game, and I will try to keep that to a minimum. We are underway. Marge Walker gets a centering pass from Carolyn Normal, and there is Trope getting her first touch of the game, the sliding grab underneath. Walker spreads it over to the far side. A little bit of running into each other there, but everyone seems to be okay. Walker to Trope as Shadow continues to gain yardage. A lot of contact at that layout. The block attempt coming up from empty from Justine Neville.
Two very important throws there to switch the field.
And Normal swims underneath the mark, floats it perfectly for Allie Wallace. Clean hold to get the season started for DC.
Yeah, a good point there for Kat Ritzman, a player who close followers of DC will know very well, but sort of an underrated player in my opinion. She collects an under-through contact, gets the disc off the sideline that leads to a goal one or two throws later. So I think that's sort of business as usual for her, but sometimes can go unnoticed.
Yeah, she's just not a super flashy player, kind of that hard-nosed, hard worker type. But yeah, she has been playing high-level ultimate for a long time, all the way back to her college days with Delaware, when she and a couple other teammates led them to a top finish in the regular season. And she also kind of broke out in the club scene with Minneapolis Dragon Thrust before moving over to the women's divisions for the DC teams. But yeah, I'm glad you shouted her out, Saul, because she has been a favorite of mine for quite some time as well.
And she's, her moving to the DC area, I think, coincides with their team sort of integrating in a way they hadn't before. Correlation, causation, I think that she's contributing and also, helps the group sort of fit together.
Annalise Peters sends the pull down for Shadow, and we get our first look at the Raleigh offense. Claire Bittigary Curtis gets that and then pushes the forehand further downfield. Looks like we have a pick in the middle of the field as The Radiants get close to scoring territory. Disc in the hands of Mary Rippey. Nice layout grab to save possession there by Bidigary Curtis. Radiance probing some tight coverage, and we get another pick.
We've got Chloe Green, who's a Radiance rookie, hubbing the offense, number 44 to the left of the thrower right now.
Rippey gets it to Green. Give-go action as Green really quarterbacking this point for Radiance. Throws into some tight coverage there, though, in the backfield, and that's swatted to the ground by Erin McCann with the block, and now Shadow looking to go quick the other way. That does hang up in the air. A lot of traffic, and it's caught after the tip. Shadow maintained possession through some fortune there, and then wide open in the end zone. Cami Groom there for the score, and Shadow take advantage of that opportunity on the fast break. They break on their first D point.
Yep, Cami Groom punching her work clock for the first time this game. That throw doing a good job of demonstrating what kind of win we're dealing with and demonstrating the good work from Shadow in the previous offensive possession. A couple of defenders there for that huck, and honestly, it spun and curved in a way that was so unexpected that we almost lost track of it and didn't even make a play defensively. So, you sort of make your own luck in games like this by getting yourself into position with numbers in situations like that. So, 0.1 to DC in that regard.
And that was Graham Cunningham there to make the heads-up play in the right place at the right time. But yeah, perhaps already seeing the impact that the wind may have in this one. Perfect start for Shadow. 2 points they claim both. 0 turnovers for them. Jackie Wang sends the pull down for another Shadow D point. That one ends up out of bounds.
We see Audrey Lyman picking up here. Audrey's going to be an important piece of the Radiance offense today, with a couple of other Radiance handlers absent today.
I'm always so intrigued to see whichever coach it is at the time where they line up Audrey, because she can really play in any spot. But yeah, Saul is right. They'll probably have to rely on her in the backfield for a lot of this game. Stuffed at the throw, perhaps not. Looking like an uncontested foul as Emma Jones defensively on the mark.
Violation call.
It's Emily Shakuski with the disc for Radiance. Looks like everyone's in the right spot this time. Sliding grab from Dawn Colton.
Radiance offense getting a little compressed here.
Tough one to squeeze. And it results in another turnover for the Radiance, so Shadow will look to break again. Not sure what the call is here. Perhaps another pick.
A pick sort of in the jumble downfield as DC tries to get their structure sorted out. Curious to see DC attacking primarily downwind here. Curious to see if they try to possess or just shoot deep to a matchup like this one.
Well, there is an immediate answer to that question. And a double coverage, late chase from Ashley Gentilette, but unable to track that one down. Lindsay Sue was there for help defense.
Good looking throw from Jackie Wang, to be honest.
Yeah, even a half chance for Gentilette is often a good look.
Cami Groom helping off of the side stack right now.
Lyman broke the mark, but a little low for the intended target, and now gives DC a short field. Pops up in the air just long enough, and despite the pressure of two defenders, Groom snatches it out of the air. That's another break for DC.
Foul. So Cami caught it out of bounds, but it seems like there's a foul on the throw. We've got lots of lines going on here on this field.
So many lines.
The more we can pay attention to our orange pylons to blur out the yellow and the blue and the white, but disc back to Jackie Wang.
Thank you, Saul, for keeping me straight there. Disc still with DC. Nice snap on the forehand from Wang to Groom. DC looking for that spot to punch into the end zone. Defender falls down, and then the easy continue for the score. Aaron McCann there for the goal, and so far it's all DC.
Yep, Cami Groom in her office here, primarily known as a defensive or D-line player, but for the last 5, 6, 7 years, she's basically made it her business to run the show on the offense for her D-line from 30 to 40 yards out, and she's just got such quickness, such speed, obviously fantastic hands, fantastic disc skills that she's, moving the disc faster than the defense can get set. So, a bit of a catch-22 there. She can take you to the cone. She can step back, distribute. It's going to be a long day for red defenders if she finds herself in positions able to do that.
Without a pun, Saul, because number 22 was there for the catch for the score?
Absolutely. I know exactly what I said.
A true pros pro you are, Saul. But yeah, great start. Speaking of pros, great start for Shadow. The clean hold to start, clean break on the second point, and then just a two-turn point on their second D point for yet another break.
Yep, would love to see Raleigh get out in some big space. Oh, and here's a zone from DC. Right on cue.
See how Radiance is able to play through it. Tyler Smith starts the possession for Radiance.
DC in a 3-3-1, trapping it on this low sideline with Jess O on the mark. Q says, I've had enough.
Big huck downfield. It's hanging, and Jamie Erickson is there lurking. Both players go up. It's Erickson who gets to the disc first.
Claire Revere almost calling the poster company, but Jamie Erickson, one of the tallest and longest defenders in the division.
Yeah, one of the premier aerial players, really, but Revere certainly was right there as well. Let's see if Radiance can get the disc back. Peters finds an open Groom to get it off the sideline. Erickson now. She uncorks a big backhand, looking for Gentilette downfield, and she boxes out, makes the grab as well. Peters to Groom as DC is knocking on the door for yet another break.
Good D from Tidcombe in the backfield.
Groom gets up, and then on the second effort, oh my goodness. Sometimes the breaks are just going your way. They are there for Cami Groom, and Shadow punches in another break.
They don't ask how, they ask how many, Daniel, although I don't know how well that applies to game one. But Erickson with the block down on the defensive side, and then she tees up a really well-shaped upwind backhand huck to Gentilette, a receiver that you like in that matchup, and really any matchup with a catchable ball. And then things got a little hairy on the goal line, but DC right where they want to be right now. A lot of backhand force from Raleigh so far. I'm curious if we see a switch up after this timeout.
I was just about to ask if there was anything you were seeing out of Radiance, that they can correct here where this game gets out of hand.
Yeah, I mean, They took a deep look against that zone from DC, which I didn't hate. The last couple of points, their spacing got a little bit compressed. Not a lot of space in the middle of the field. But at this point, you got to put one in order to get your defense on the field. And Raleigh's running a bunch of different lines, so not that players are sitting sort of static, but get your teammates a little bit comfortable in the game with a couple goals here, and then we can start to really evaluate, structural things from the Radiance side.
And that's one of the things that's so tough, Saul, about this format of play. I feel like it can be so much more difficult to rattle off a comeback with the clock becoming your enemy relatively quickly. So the sooner that the Radiance can get a foothold in this game, the better for them for sure.
That being said, I do think the end-of-quarter situations give you an opportunity to earn some breaks back without necessarily doing it the old-fashioned way. So, you possess through the end of the time clock, you get possession through the end of the quarter, and if you turn it over, the other team doesn't get a chance to score. And if you do score, then that's a half break right there. And you have timeouts to call. If you have a defensively oriented line on the field who gets a turn, you can put your offense out there. So there are ways in the pro format to come back that are not available to you in the USAU format. But the clock is ticking for sure.
So out of the timeout, Radiance back on offense, trying to solve this riddle of the Shadow D.
Yep, Shadow junking up the side stack to start. They're into person defense.
Some quick disc movement. Green leading the way.
Good looking possession so far.
Rippy to Erica Birdsong. One of the breakout players of the Radiance's championship run last season. Nice disc movement, but that one a little too hot from Caitlin Gross. No real chance on a play from Mary Rippey, which I really feel like that was a wasteful moment of a really good opportunity for the Radiance.
Yeah, great possession from Raleigh there all the way up the field, and then throwing into a tight window, open receiver. You'd love to connect on that one for sure.
But the fingertip block from Bittigary Curtis gets it back for the Radiance. They'll have a short field opportunity to punch in their first score of the game. Green just gets it off the sideline.
Important throw from Bittigary Curtis there.
It was snared by Gross. And that one too tall for the intended target. That's another red zone turnover for Raleigh.
Oh.
Shadow gives it right back. Error on the reset, and Radiance will get to start this possession right on the goal line.
Let's see how they set up in this static position here. Ooh, a lot of people saying, I want to score.
What a snag to save there from Green. And then dropped right at the front. It looked for sure to be Raleigh's first goal of the season.
Yeah, it was too bad. Paige Carver had been making a couple of excellent cuts that hadn't been thrown to. Too bad for that particular moment.
And that one is over the head of Trope. So some sloppiness sinking in here. The first point we've really had like this, going back and forth with the turnovers.
Yeah, I'm curious if DC is able to generate another turn, if they would call timeout and put a different group on for the next offensive possession.
Intercepted underneath. Great play defensively by Marge Walker. And all alone is Trope. She goes for the big backhand downfield. Allie Wallace giving chase. Pressure from Bittigary Curtis is enough to knock it away. I think it was tailing out of bounds as well.
Yeah, I mean, we can see the impact of the win there. Trope has no mark. She's got this one all lined up, and she puts a great edge on it, and the wind just eats away at it as it's in the air, and it fades away to that sideline.
Still a complete flip of the field, though, for Shadow.
Yep.
in her own end zone.
DC giving up the primary reset for free. Seems like a scouted priority there.
Gross goes up early, has enough time to recover. And she puts a big backhand up in the air, but that one just pushed down by the wind, and then a trio of DC defenders as well to make sure.
Yeah, I suspect a timeout is coming here. Yep, there we go.
DC calls timeout, and interesting, they do have the starting O-line out there, Saul, so.
That may be the end of the quarter. I may have lost track of that.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
It is indeed the end of the quarter. So Raleigh is shut out in the opening quarter. Shadow not quite able to take advantage of that opportunity to add another break, but a lot to figure out for Raleigh going into the second quarter.
Certainly. There are moments of good spacing, good structure. DC doing a good job against the initiating sets a lot of the time. They've got help off of a side stack. They've got defenders committing to taking away that open side underneath space. From there, I think DC has room to get more of an advantage if they can create backfield pressure and get some of those short field turnovers that Radiance was able to generate on this other sideline or other end zone during that point.
This live broadcast is brought to you by the Premier Ultimate League. The PUL is a 501c6 nonprofit. This league has been community funded since day one, and we are so grateful for the support. We ask that you consider donating to help us continue to transform and fulfill our mission. Head to PremierUltimateLeague.com to donate today. One quarter of the way into the season, and it's been all DC so far. 4-0. 3 of those goals breaks. See Amanda Beans Murphy leading the. What do you call this? You can't call it halftime, obviously. Quarter time? That doesn't sound right, but I guess that's what the
official timeout.
Leading the talk there, which is so interesting because Saul, you mentioned a little bit before the start of the game. There is some roster overlap, a connection between these two teams. Murphy fits that, but more so than anyone else, really.
Certainly, I mean Amanda Murphy Beans has spent many years playing for Raleigh-based teams, Phoenix, Radiance, went to college at Wake Forest with Lindsay Sue, and also has spent multiple seasons playing for the Shadow, and most recently has played for DC Scandal. She's out with injury right now, but that's a scouting advantage for DC, and I'm sure Beans would love to be out there executing the scouting report herself.
So what do you say? I mean, we're going to look at the Shadow team talk there. What do you say? I feel like it's easy to say what to say when you're losing the situation. What do you say when you're up 4-0 in the situation to maintain the focus, or are you focusing on tweaks to perfect your strategy? What is the talk in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a high level team like the Shadow, it's windy. You're not necessarily going to always get the outcome that you want or that you would expect. Or even on the other side of that coin, like you're going to get turns without doing the right thing. They come into this game, I'm sure, with a game plan, with priorities against certain players on Raleigh, and they have to assess whether they're actually executing that or if their execution error is coming from the other side. I think for the most part, like what we've talked about with the dead disc plays, with the certain poaches from certain areas, like they can continue to evaluate if they are happy with the way they're doing that. But for the most part, like continue to take the high percentage looks that you like, right? It's a great in-system backhand hook from Jamie Erickson to Ashley Gentilette that you want to reinforce versus, a poor swing at a high stall as opposed to maybe send it long in these conditions. Those are the kinds of decisions you would have to make.
Audrey Lyman pushes it to Lindsay Sue on the far side as we are back underway.
We saw a touch from Jenny Way there, back with the team this year.
That throw, I think, got away a little bit, but it's Way who's able to save possession for Raleigh.
Good choice of receiver.
Yeah, she gives the thrower a big margin of error.
Good break mark throw there from Lyman.
Sue comes across
Great
and then
look.
pushes the backhand to the end zone. Raleigh Radiance is on the board.
Left possession for Raleigh.
Grace Connerly there for the score. But nice, patient work from the Radiance O-line. Gets them off the schneid.
Yep. Looked to me like that inside forehand from Lyman to Lindsay Sue cracked the whole thing wide open. We saw a drop from a receiver earlier in the game on that exact throw. That's going to be, a high leverage pass if we can complete it at a consistent rate for Raleigh. We're going to sort of expose the break side when defenders were expecting that sort of wider swing over to the other side of the field. Let's see what the Raleigh defense lines up here with their first defensive point in a long time.
Yeah, since the opening point of the first quarter. Such a nice grab by Way. Under defensive duress.
That's just another day at the office for Jenny Way. Honestly, it's funny to think about the fact that some people might be watching Raleigh for the first time and not have experienced watching her play before because she was such a cornerstone piece of this program for so long. But it's honestly kind of fun when you have great players like that come in and as like bonus pieces around the core that's been growing since then. Excellent pull from Claire Revere.
Yeah, it's going to pin DC on the side.
Cool.
DC able to switch the field and now have it in the middle.
Great breakthrow from Lisa Dang to Marie Perivier.
Perivier gets it right back.
Oh, good heads-up block from Tyler Smith there with a cutter coming back towards the middle.
Smith, right place, right time, and it gives Raleigh a chance to get one of these breaks back, but stolen right back.
Foul, no contest.
Foul, no contest there. It was Walker who was hunting.
Marge Walker looks up to speed right away this game.
Big forehand downfield from Smith, and that one starts floating right at the wrong time. Falls to the ground in the end. Looks like we have another foul call.
We got Marie Perivier as the help defender here for DC. Marie from Atlanta has been putting up big numbers for UGA Athena recently, coming up to DC to play for the Shadow, and that is a huge pickup for them. Marie is an incredible, well-rounded athletic player. No foul on the play.
Based on the replay, I think the observers get that one right.
I think I like that look for Raleigh, though. Like, that's one of your best deep throwers, throwing deep to a great speedy receiver.
Yeah, just got a little caught up in that wind. And Neville lost the steps she had earned. So Shadow with the second crack at the hold.
Looks like maybe force middle from Raleigh here.
That one pops up in the air. Not the throw, but not swatted the ground. Instead, it stays up in the air just long enough to be saved. Lisa Dang to the front of the line to Perivier. And Perivier pushes the backhand. What a layout grab by Marge Walker just outside the end zone. The full extension saves the disc, and then the forehand behind the intended target from Dang.
Yeah, we saw sort of some of the pros and cons of an FM here from Raleigh. Some open receivers sort of going windshield wipers back and forth for DC, but also some of those breakthrows just missing their spot.
An effortless big forehand from Smith. Again, this one hangs.
Everybody coming to the party.
More DC players in the area than Raleigh players, and the numbers win out.
I'm curious if this is an intentional tactical change from the Radiance here.
Another throw gets away from Dang, and Radiance take back over at midfield. We have seen a couple of big hucks from Tyler Smith this point. Revere steps around the mark, but again, a little bit behind the intended target. Became awkward for her intended target and leads to another drop.
Great throw from Walker.
Able to fight it through the wind to get it to around midfield. Big forehand from Wallace. Just outside the end zone is that grab. And the easy go for the score. So a sloppy one there for DC. Claire France and Sammy Smalling connecting for the goal in the end, however, to maintain that 4-goal lead.
A lot of tired legs on both sides after that point. I think Raleigh's going to be happy with that D point. Against the vert stack of DC, we saw a lot of undercuts arcing back towards traffic in the middle of the field. We saw Tyler Smith get a heads-up block there. I'm curious if that can continue to be a point of leverage for the Raleigh defense. On the other side of the coin, we saw Marge Walker have access to her terrific shaped backhand huck that went across the field, and then Allie Wallace countered back across over the stack to Claire France. So these are the kinds of angles that you have to navigate in the FM, but if they can do it at a high clip and you can't consistently keep a potent thrower away from their favorite throw, that's something that you also have to keep in mind.
Does that feel like the difference between these two teams right now, Saul? Just DC is throwing it better in these conditions than Raleigh is right now?
Possibly. I think DC is maybe a little more clear about their priorities. I think they're pretty comfortable taking relatively high percentage deep looks to one-on-one coverage, and defensively they're sending extra defenders on every jump ball that goes up. So that's what I'm seeing so far.
Katie Milestrup gets the forehand to Birdsong. Birdsong bounces that one up in the air too much. Gets over the head of Gross. Trope thought about picking it up, but is going to leave it for her teammate instead. Jackie Wang trots over. Quickly resets it to the middle. Trope to Wang to Trope, and Trope tries to push that back and downfield. Milestrup there defensively to ensure the turnover, but I don't think that was the intended throw there.
Nope. No, a good structured defense from the Raleigh 7 there. I think offense is going to be the name of the game for this group, whether they can consistently piece together these 5, 6, 7 throw possessions to get down to the end zone. We got an open receiver deep. And that is a beautiful, incisive forehand from Caitlin Gross down the field.
That throw a little bit behind Bidegary Curtis, and that has been the margin, it feels like, for a lot of these Radiance throws. Just a little bit behind, just not quite sharp enough. So it leads to yet another break opportunity for DC.
Oof.
Rippy, not sure how. I guess we can give her credit for the block now. It looked like she got just a sliver, and I guess that was enough to lead to the drop.
Yeah, if I'm DC, it's a tricky balance of running system offense and then just sending the disc down the field to force Raleigh to go 70 yards because their defense seems stiff right now.
Sliding grab from Bidegary Curtis. And Birdsong toes the line. That one swatted in the reset look. Emma Jones there defensively, and the disc goes up in the air right away. Trope, the one nearest, but it tails too far away from her, unable to make the play.
Another throw falling victim to the wind in that same way that we've seen so far, which is going to make this forehand throw for Gross incredibly challenging. And Cammie Groom comes through for the Callahan.
That is about as easy a Callahan as you will ever see. Gross must have been high in the stall there, and really a trio of DC players were closer to that disc than the intended target. Cammie Groom adds to her tally.
Yep, this upline cut from Annie Bacco as a handler is open, but the wind is just howling in that position, and Cammie knows her defender or her offensive player who she's marking is sort of abandoned on the far sideline, and it's such an inaccessible throw in these conditions that she's got the green light to just peel off and intercept any high stall pass that's going up in that position. So, kudos to DC. There was a lot of moxie from the Raleigh players at that point, honestly. but just weren't able to string together the necessary reset passes to get that disc into the end zone.
Perhaps, as we mentioned, Radiance feeling the absence of those key handlers that they are without this game can really make a difference in games like this.
Yeah, no Alex Barnett, no Bridget Meisner, and no Ashley Powell for Raleigh today. So, if you were to go back through PUL record keeping, that's probably 25-30% of Raleigh franchise touches in their group's history. So definitely
probably an even higher percentage of assists, I would guess.
Big shot to J-Way.
And this one is reeled in. Big yardage gained on the first throw of the point for Radiance, and Colton unmarked, as is Lindsay Sue in the end zone. Just what the doctor ordered for Radiance, a quick, clean hold.
Yep, Grace Connerly, one of the handlers who's still around. She's got great power, great edge control, and she pushes the disc into the wind for Jenny Way. 2 throws later, we're in the end zone. That's a good-looking point for Raleigh. DC sure to counter with some sort of help scheme to prevent that pull play from accessing isolation downfield with favorite throwers and favorite receivers.
And that first throw of Connolly to Way is really just the pass that Radiance hasn't won, seemingly in every, both offensively and defensively in this game, Saul. So if they can start, competing on those passes a little bit better, win some of those ones that DC has been winning, good way to get back into this game.
Yeah, and I think to DC's credit, they've been sort of on the front foot in those interactions, but I think it's mostly, it's not because DC has better receivers or anything like that. It's because they came into this game with the intention of throwing that throw. When they see their receiver open, they're putting their throwers in the right position. Raleigh's got a lot of throwers catching a swing pass with a lot of chaos down in field in front of them, and they don't really have the time to let that offense resolve for the look they want, whereas DC has a simple look, they know what they're looking for, and their receiver is ready for it.
Titcomb with a big pull. Floaty as well.
Back in the FM, hand block from Gina Titcomb.
Great play by Titcomb after the pull. Stuffs Lisa Dang right at the point. And Radiance now has a short field and a wide open cutter to the far side. It's dug out as well. Great saving play. Yeah, looks like we have a call that will send that throw back.
Gina Titcomb with smart hands there with DC attacking downwind. They're going to want to release the disc high.
Radiance knocking on the door of their first break of the game. Just a few yards out. Ooh! Stumble, but saved on the throw behind. Nice play by Titcomb to save possession. And she slices that forehand. That's one I think you'd like to catch in the end, but not able to be squeezed. That throw pops up, as we've seen so many of those normally easy forehands. And that one is saved! What a grab in the back of the end zone. Claire Revere pulls it in, and Radiance gets their first break.
Fantastic point from Gina Titcomb and Claire Revere there. Q gets her hand on one of the high backhands from Lisa Dang earlier and then has her head up to clean up this floating pass. And then Claire Revere puts her head down, makes the play to clinch that break. And then curious to see how DC is going to counter in terms of their lines. Are we going to see a similar O group, or are we going to see a brand new 7?
I haven't been keeping super close track of who they're putting out for what line, but it does feel like they're playing most players equally both ways.
I think both teams are approaching that way so far this game. I'm curious, if we see any timeout calls, or if because they're running sort of offense-defense agnostic lines, if they're just going to let their groups roll with the 7 on the field at any given moment. So, Daniel, DC has had all the advantage so far, and yet they only see themselves up 3 with 2:46 left in the second quarter. If Raleigh gets one more break in this 2:46, and then they can hold DC at the end of the quarter, that's a 2-point game going into the second half, and I would think Raleigh would have to love that position.
Yeah, Shadow's kind of fallen into this, these long, sloggy points where they're not taking advantage of all their opportunities. Kind of let Raleigh hang around a little bit. Obviously, that was Radiance's first break. They'll have to get a couple more to fully get back in this game. But yeah, these next 2 minutes all feel crucial for the outlook of the second half.
Yep.
And they're a throw away from Trope. It'll be a full field, but the Radiance will have an opportunity to claw another one back.
Switching the lane from DC there.
Milestrip gets it off the sideline to Green. Been a little bit stagnant downfield for the Radiance.
That's good D from Trope in the lane, though. They created some good space, and Trope was ready to attack that lane right away. And here's a loose pass.
Boy, the wind pushed that one all the way from one sideline to the other.
Yeah, I mean, we can see on some of these, the throws that are not thrown with intention are getting gobbled up.
Kat Ritzman, and that one getting pushed up by the wind. Big traffic underneath, and it's intercepted. Gary Curtis, the tallest player there. She's the one who comes down with it in the end.
Good looking shot from Chloe Green.
Swatted away, though, defensively, as Gross kind of had to wait on it. Save at the front of the stack to reel in that throw from Groom by Peters. But that one blocked by Gross as Peters tried to step around the mark.
Another hand block from Raleigh on that inside backhand. And again, I'm curious if there's a scouting point there for the red defense.
Here's Milestrip looking for the reset as we are 30 seconds away from the end of the half.
Found the throw. Curious if the clock stops in this situation, Daniel.
Does not look like it. Not in the stadium anyway.
Raleigh's certainly incentivized to hold possession for 10 more seconds. Injury on the field.
Looks like we have a full timeout called as well by Radiance. So the way that the possession will, or the end of the clock will work here is when the clock hits 0, if the disc is still in possession, that possession will be able to be finished. And then the half will end when that team either turns the disc over or scores.
Yeah, incredibly high priority for the Raleigh line that goes in to not only score, but possess for the full 11 seconds remaining on the clock. And I expect DC to throw out their 7 most capable defenders to try to create a turnover on this first or second throw. Because DC has, 2 timeouts of their own that they can burn to put out their favorite offensive personnel group as well.
Yeah, does the clock impact strategy here offensively for Radiance? Do you think there's any directive to, make sure you get that clock to 0 if you can before you try to finish out the point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the highest priority, to be honest. I think you're unlikely to see an open deep look in this first 10 seconds, so 1 or 2 reset passes, hold the disc a little bit longer than you're used to, I think is a totally fine look here.
Baco completes the under pressure forehand. Nice play by Milestrip to beat the defender. Gary Curtis now. Smooth work from the Radiance offense. We are at 0, so this will be the final possession of the half. Could be a really big one. If the Radiance are able to punch it in. Just a few yards out now. Gary Curtis with the disc again. She floats it. Just outside the end zone is Gross. And she throws into traffic, and it's swatted down to the ground. Oh, that's a heartbreaker for Raleigh. They were right on the door of getting a huge goal into half. That throw into traffic leads to a turnover instead, and so DC will lead 6-3 at the break.
All in all, big picture, week one, I think we really like that possession from Raleigh. Chloe Green with a very important inside forehand to open up the offense there. Obviously, we don't like the outcome. That's a heads-up play from defense from DC, and that's maybe a bigger structural thing in the stack from the cutters for Raleigh. We have maybe one too many people in that front of the end zone space, but all in all, after the start of the game, I think that's a really high efficiency possession, throwing open people, attacking the disc with a lot of velocity, and I think that's something to build on going forward. And now, Radiance, if they convert all their red zone possessions, are at 6-5, 6-6 in this game. So I think, not that anything can happen in the second half, but I think that Radiance has demonstrated that they've grown into the game. They've acclimated to the win, and they're ready to put points on the board if they can continue to get these blocks on the DC offense.
Yeah, nice job by Raleigh after a rough start to get back in it a little bit. I believe they will get possession to start the second half as well. Just a 3-goal game sets up for a fun second half here between Raleigh Radiance and DC Shadow in the PUL season opener.
On, Brett!
Couple minutes away from the start of the second half. So it was all Shadow to start, really. Jumped out to a 4-0 lead, and then I believe 5-1. But Radiance had a lot of fight in that second quarter in particular, and were inches away from making this a 2-goal game at halftime. What was the telling trend of the first half, do you think, to build up this difference, this 3-goal lead for Shadow, and what do you hope to see in the second half?
Yeah, I think Raleigh's defense went to a forced middle on a couple of those deep points, which I think compressed the lane that the DC vert stack was able to attack, and some of those throws that were more of an angled throw as opposed to a direct throw down the sideline got eaten up in the wind or hand blocked by good active Raleigh marks. Offensively, I genuinely think it was just Raleigh finding their sea legs in this swirly wind, playing against another team for the first time this season, and just generally like getting to know the teammates that they're playing with on their split line here.
Yeah, we unfortunately don't have detailed stats being sent to us, but it would be real curious to see what the kind of those long ball completion numbers were between the two sides in the first half, because particularly early, that felt like the big difference between these two. Shadow was kind of coming down with everything, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, I think partially as a byproduct of just having more bodies there a lot of the time. We were seeing active DC defenders peeling off the back of their side stack to provide help. And when Raleigh got flowing, when they had multiple lanes attacking at the same time, as opposed to having the disc static on one side with a big side stack on the other side, we saw really good motion when they could connect those multiple downfield passes and move past the challenging resets in the backfield in the crosswind here.
We should just be a few moments away from the start of the third quarter. And we do have another game going on this opening weekend of Premier Ultimate League action between Indy and Nashville. We got a close one over there. 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Indy leads Nashville 10-9. So if you're unable to watch both games at the same time, maybe figure out a way to do so, because it looks like we've got two good halves of action as we get the 2024 PUL season underway, and it's DC who starts on offense this second half.
We saw no mark on that first throw for a while from Raleigh.
Trope goes up and puts a big floaty backhand downfield. And this time it's Radiance who wins the numbers game down there.
Excellent block from Sarah McKee there.
It was Norm Weil who was the target for DC. Lyman picks up for Raleigh to come back the other way. Lyman lasers a forehand downfield, well beyond the reach of Julia Zrzinski.
Yeah, Claire Trope in good help position on the previous sort of attack there from Raleigh. We had an open deep look first, but Trope in help position and then crashed back down to take away the fill cut as well.
Walker to Dang to start the second possession of the point for DC. Ritzman fakes the big backhand, settles for the short throw underneath to Wallace.
We got a pick in the stack. DC seems like they're more determined to work the disc up the field with smaller passes at this point. We've seen two big pump fakes at somewhat open receivers down the field.
Ritzman puts the backhand downfield, but it's too low for Trope to make a play on it.
All right, it's early in the second half, but this is a big tone setter moment for this Raleigh line. If they can march up this direction that's been so much trouble for both groups, that would be a big step in the right direction.
Colton puts it out to space, but just a little bit too far Her intended target had steps.
There's Sarah McKee again, taking this Carolyn Normile matchup.
Normile unleashes a big one. That gets caught up in the wind, though, and intercepted by Lindsay Sue.
Yep, good positional defense there from Sue.
Layout from Risman comes up just short. And then saved. What a play by Sue to save possession. The high stall look from Lyman looked like he was headed for the turf. And that one is headed for the turf. That forehand not high enough, not floaty enough for Lyman cutting for the front cone.
Yeah, that's a challenging touch throw with an extra defender coming down to poach out of the stack. A lot of tired legs on the Radiance D, but a throwaway. Potentially Sue coming out of the stack, disrupting that angle.
Big impact on the point so far from Lindsay Sue. Great to see them back out on the field after missing last season with the Radiance. But Raleigh, they do want to get back in this game and have to start taking advantage of these opportunities that defense is earning.
A lot of helping in the stack from DC on the active space. Sue punishes it with a gut shot there.
Miscommunication, I think, on that reset look.
That look has been poison for Raleigh's offense so far today in this wind. It hasn't really been there for them.
And Trope muscles the forehand. Oh, a lot of contact with the legs. Sue defensively on Lisa Dang. Looks like we'll have a conversation about this one.
Yeah, Raleigh fans are not going to be excited about that call, but Lisa Dang is a very, very smart player. She knows exactly what she's doing there. Just basically putting herself in a position where Sue can't really make a play on the disc without going through her body. So whether Lisa was still making a play actively on the disc there is up for discussion, just based on the way that her angle diverged from the angle of the disc. But I think a foul contest is maybe a fair resolution here. Yep, that's what we get.
So the disc will go back to the thrower. That is Claire Trope.
Claire is not excited about that extra 15 yards she has to go pick up. Oh, Pro Ultimate, folks. We have an extra disc on the sideline.
Trope settles for the reset the second time around.
Oh, hand block from Emily Shakuski.
Another point block. Radiant starting to rack those up as Marge Walker gets defended right at the point. And now a big gainer to Sue. And Radiance has numbers in the red zone. Sue totally unmarked. Just outside now is Lyman, unable to walk it in. And that throw too low. Oh, my goodness.
Lyman with a perfection forehand huck to the far side of the field to start that possession, but more red zone woes from Raleigh. Just not enough organization, not clear priorities of who's supposed to be cutting in what space there.
It really felt like Raleigh should have won this point 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, their marks are giving DC a lot of trouble right now.
Normile to Wallace. Quick disc movement has Shadow outside of the shadow of their own end zone.
Yeah, important mark from Lyman there. Walker was going to send that backhand to Trope if the mark hadn't.
Don Colton, a whisker away from a massive layout. DC starting to march it the other way. Big backhand, lots of space, and Trope is all alone. That's an absolute backbreaker for Raleigh. So many red zone chances to get a break. Instead, Shadow just hangs on for the hold.
Yeah. Real gut check there from that line for DC. Allie Wallace with a really nicely weighted backhand across the field to Trope. Really tough point from the Radiance for sure there. Kuski coming through, Emily Shakuski coming through with a hand block. That's what she's known for around here. She, funny story, last year I think one of her teammates at College Nationals told her that they would bake her a cake if she had 5 hand blocks at College Nationals, and in semifinals against UVM, she gets a hand block in their zone, turns to the sideline and puts up a 5 with her hand and points at it. So that's a position of strength for her for sure. But
Did she get the cake?
oh, I would have to assume she did.
I sure hope so. That's great. Knowing mid-game the stat to get you the reward. I love that.
Yeah. Very important offensive point for Raleigh here. Like, if you can punch it in, one possession, high percentage looks, that's going to get your defense right back out there and keep the energy up and keep the momentum that you've got right now.
Smith centers to Titcomb.
DC down in junk. Effectively so far.
You're all having to be real patient.
You worry about zone in these conditions just by letting the dominant throwers of the other team get all of the touches like we're seeing right now. But, big shot.
Open for the score as well was McKee there. Or excuse me, Tanya Proksch, but not able to make the catch. The wind, I think, gave that one a funny hop as it was coming in.
Yep. Another Erickson backhand on the way. And this one is picture perfect.
Right on the money for Gentilette. And all of a sudden, Shadow is looking to break. Looks like we have a... No, I thought there was a call behind the disc. Instead, it's a relatively easy punch in as Shadow takes advantage of that turnover, and they add to their lead.
Yeah, this is Florence Brooks on the receiving end of this break. Florence from the DMV from Maryland and played her college ball at UNC Chapel Hill. So a very familiar face for those of us around here and much beloved member of the community. So while she is scoring for the other team, she is welcome back here anytime. Another highlight of that Jamie Erickson backhand, just perfectly out to stride. Obviously, your receiver in that case is going to give you a lot of room for error, but that one was on the money. And again, in that direction where we've been seeing those backhands tail to the right out the sideline, she measured that one up perfectly, so props to her for that.
Yeah, just going to say, we've seen a lot of throws into that space, but none anywhere near as successful and well-placed as that big Jamie Erickson backhand.
And I do think as we see the sun go down, we're seeing the wind die down. The flags are not moving nearly as much, so I think we can expect cleaner play and more creative throwing from both sides as the second half goes on.
Really a nightmare start to this quarter for Raleigh. If the last point wasn't must score, this one certainly is.
We've got an open Paige Carver in the middle of the field.
This instead finds its way over to Gross on the far side. She pushes that forehand too far.
She had Katie Milestrup going deep on the butterfly cut, but the throw comes down with too much edge. Could have maybe waited an extra moment to let that one go. Open receiver.
Pick call downfield brings play to a momentary stop. Nice work by DC as they approach midfield. This has been a space where they have just been much more confident than the Radiance. These short passes in the backfield space.
This has been an excellent possession so far.
And then Gentilette with the perfect touch for the easy completion for another break. That's Ellen Mueller there for DC.
Yeah, great possession for DC there. A lot of action on that left side of the field. Certainly some potential for clutter or traffic, but Cammie Groom getting a couple of touches, Aaron McCann getting in there, Graham Cunningham with a couple of good throws continuing the possession, and all in all, just offensive players being dangerous, forcing their defenders to stay tight to them, and then getting those marks on a bit of a sort of water skis there, going back and forth.
We haven't seen a whole lot of points or possessions like that from either team, but really just incisive textbook offense for really the entire point until they finally had that opening to attack the end zone. So the rocky third quarter for Raleigh continues as this one continues to get further out of reach for them.
This is the line that we saw have some success for them last time we saw them on the field. Didn't get into the end zone, had some goal line trouble, but this has been the group executing out in big space the best of any of the three Raleigh lines that we're seeing tonight.
Big gainer to start from Audrey Lyman. Now Lyman looking for even more. Uncorks a big forehand downfield. Couple of defenders there, including Gentilette. She's the one who ends up with it.
Another instance of DC having multiple bodies in the deep space when the throw goes up. Good backfield defense from Grace Connerly there on Peters.
Big forehand all the way across the field, and it's completed. Cammie Groom tracks it down. But that one swatted away by Sue. Nice defensive play to save what would have been another break for Shadow.
One thing I'd like to see from the Raleigh offense here is DC is doing a good job of helping off of those weak side cutters. Just would love to see them activate multiple bodies here any given time that they've got the disc on the sideline to sort of flood in there and have multiple options instead of sitting there letting their defender sort of poach off of them. We see Don Colton doing that right now.
Throw to space, but no one home for Raleigh. First throw, a turnover after the D. Groom is able to spin to find the reset. But that throw well behind the intended target.
And the Radiants have done a pretty good job keeping Cammie Groom under control during the second half so far.
Credit Sarah Spall with the block. So we see another big forehand go downfield. This time it will be reeled in. Red zone opportunity now for Raleigh. Lyman bends the forehand to the back corner, but it's snagged out of the air. Brilliant defensive play by Groom ends the quarter, so Raleigh gets shut out in the period. It'll be a 9-3 advantage for Shadow going into the fourth. Discraft Ultrastar is the official disc of the Premier Ultimate League, the world leader in discs sports. Thank you, Discraft. This live broadcast is brought to you by the Premier Ultimate League. The PUL is a 501c6 nonprofit. This league has been community funded since day one, and we are so grateful for the support. We ask that you consider donating to help us to continue to transform and fulfill our mission. Head to PremierUltimateLeague.com to donate today. So we hyped up that third quarter as a chance for Raleigh to continue the momentum they'd built up in the end of that first half, get back into it. Instead, they get shut out 3-0 quarter for Shadow. Is there any way that they can get back into this one?
Yeah, pace of play becomes relevant here, obviously, right away. I think in that quarter we saw Raleigh connecting on deep throws. Audrey Lyman wound up a couple of those forehands. We've seen Tyler Smith do that. We've seen multiple Raleigh throwers connect deep. It's been the transitional areas that have really bitten them today, getting from that 20 yards outside the end zone space and actually getting into end zone, punching that disc in with high percentage looks, and that has been the difference so far. We're seeing 3 or 4 misconnections, dropped throws, unnecessary, challenging windows that have, we could have 6 or 7 goals for Raleigh on the board at this point. And credit to DC, they're applying pressure. They're taking Raleigh out of plan A most of the time with bringing extra defenders down to defend, maybe isolation cutters at the front of the stack. But going forward in the fourth quarter, I think you can continue to attack that deep space when you have the right matchups. And we got to have offensive players cycling down the field, ready to punch those opportunities into the goal line. I think the defense looks good. They're generating turnovers.
DC at this point in the game. See if Raleigh's able to find a way to manufacture some quick scores. Tick come right up the middle. And they continue that way. Raleigh. Oh, just outside the end zone. Excuse me.
Rolled not in.
I thought that one was in for the score. The team was celebrating as such. Let's see if they're able to punch it all the way in. No, a great block to save the score. Great defensive play to save. I believe that was Brooks on the play. So more red zone heartbreak for Radiance. That has been the story of a lot of this game, the second half in particular.
Pick call in the stack.
Mueller with the disc for DC. Neville checks it back into play. Peters sends it all the way downfield, but caught up in the wind there.
Yep, superior read from the defender there. I believe that's Tanya Proch.
Proch drops it back to Titcomb for the reset. I think maybe a little bit of a hand on that release from Titcomb. Not sure. Either way, it is a turnover. Cunningham just able to toe that line. Mueller for DC. Pops it over the mark to Peters, and no defensive help at the front cone. Not sure if there was a call or not. Maybe there's some confusion after the point here.
Looks to me a bit like an uninvolved pick, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, pick call at the front of the stack. Did not involve Peters.
regardless of the resolution, this is a well-weighted backhand break from DC number 4, and that is Ellen Mueller. This was a throw that was D'd a couple times by Radiance early in the game, and against that flat mark can access that space behind the mark for that upline cut that they have been missing and that Radiance has been unsuccessful attacking a couple of times.
Saul, can you put yourself in the shoes of the coaching staff of the Radiance? What are you saying to the team? You know, in a team that is being plagued by kind of the same issue really for a lot of the game. You know, what are the coaches saying to the team here to try to fix those red zone issues?
I think in the big picture, the Radiance, even last season when they won the championship, their approach as a team is, I mean, it's cliche to say, it's process focused. It's about growth of the players involved and growth of the community. So, you know, not an outcome that they want, and it's frustrating to see sort of continued mistakes in the same spaces. But on the other hand, if there's something clear your team is deficient at, you can attack that clearly at practice. So I think that, you know, this is a clear priority for them moving forward, and there have been clear successes for the group overall, in terms of defensively, in terms of on the mark, and some looking deep. So there's clear pros and clear cons to today's performance.
See an early turnover in the possession for Raleigh. Couple of players in the area for Shadow. Friendly fire on the collision, but it does not prevent the score, so Shadow continues their dominant second half performance.
Yeah, I am not a fan of that throw. I think, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that was a long open side pass to the cutter out of the stack, but if that's a throw to Jackie Wang, I think that is a throw that needs to be directly to her chest. A throw that strays into the end zone to a long upline cut is dangerous and bad news waiting to happen, and I think everybody out there should be avoiding those throws at all costs.
Yeah, it's hard to say on replay who the intended target was on that one.
Or, on the other hand, if you're a cutter, you should be cutting to the weak side and not be dragging your defender into long upline space. That's also an option.
It's one of those ones where you see it in football a lot, I feel, where, you know, all you see is the interception.
Right.
But you don't know if the receiver cut the wrong route or
right.
what have you that led to it. So.
Yep. And, you know, it's game 1 of the season, so
sure.
You know, we don't have those things perfectly ironed out, but
right.
I have a gripe against that throw.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely is one that can lead, and we've seen it lead to a lot of unsafe play, which especially, you know, at this point in the game, we just want everyone to be safe out there.
Certainly. Even at 0-0.
Of course, of course. See a big forehand.
That's a good looking throw.
And it is weighted perfectly. That has been absent from the Raleigh performance today, but Julia Zorzinski is able to reel that one in and get Raleigh on the board finally here in the second half.
Yep. There we see Dawn Colton making an impact. Dawn's a household name. People see her flying around with big layouts and big sky catches, and I think that she's done a lot of work to round out her game over the last few years, and that is a spectacular forehand huck into, you know, diminishing wind, but there's still swirling wind out there, and that's a perfect throw on the money to a great receiver, Julia Zorzinski. Definitely a feather in their cap going away from this game.
Yeah, really nice throw there from Dawn. A throw that just hasn't been there for Raleigh in terms of execution this entire game.
Yeah, I mean, it's been there more and more over the course of the last couple of quarters. The struggle has been the payoff. You know, the yardage is going to be on the stat sheet for some of these receivers, some of these throwers, and also at the end of the day, it's been a matter of getting into end zone structure and trying to punch it in with high percentage looks. That's been the challenge for them so far.
So Raleigh finally able to get the D back out. Finally a chance to try to mount some sort of comeback. It'll be an early huck from DC. And Trope gets up. Defender in the area, but often is the case, does not matter when Claire Trope is the intended target. Quick score for DC.
Yep. Props to Claire Trope. She's capable. She is fantastic. But I love the throw from Marie Perivier. That is a rookie on the team being trusted to get out in isolation, collect a big under, and launch a booming backhand, which she has put on display for many years. She is going to be an absolute weapon for this team this year.
Yeah, it'll be good to see Marie, a product of the Atlanta Ultimate area, played her college Ultimate with Georgia Athena. Really interested to see how she fits into these DC rosters, or if she does indeed play Scandal in the club season. Certainly a player who can beat defenses in lots of different ways.
Yeah, I think she'll fit well because this team seems like a group that likes to play players both ways, likes to deploy people in a variety of different situations. So Marie is going to be an excellent option for them in multiple senses.
And it always seems that those DC teams are really great at integrating new players, oftentimes out of necessity, because so many new Ultimate players come into the area and join those teams. So excited to see how Marie fits in the long term, as we see Raleigh trying to get back on the board, but I think their efforts to tightrope the far side went astray.
Shot goes up.
Immediate forehand, and that one's knocked away. Nice play defensively by CBC.
Cami Groom knew she had to approach that one in a maybe unconventional way, going up against a receiver or a defender with maybe a 7-inch advantage on her.
Here's Big Larry Curtis popping up over the mark to find Birdsong. And Birdsong's forehand is in for the score. It's been a frustrating evening a lot of the time for Caitlin Gross, but she's there to reel that one in.
Yep, I think Caitlin operating in a more comfortable area this past point, operating in the space in front of the disc. She's been asked to pick up a lot tonight in the absence of some of the more traditional handler types, but Caitlin thrives in that sort of intermediate space, and we saw that there. Great hand-eye, great footwork.
And we're talking about players being integrated on DC. It's not something we talk about a whole lot with these North Carolina programs, Saul, that feel so homegrown relative to a lot of others. But Claire Bittigary Curtis, one that is not a native, and it's really been fun to see her blossom as a player since moving to the area a couple seasons ago. And she has really been depended on in this game in a big way, and has come up in a lot of moments.
Yeah, she's a obviously very tall player, but seeing her late in last season with the Radiance, she was relied on a lot as a downfield reset of sorts. She's sort of cutting often in those higher stall situations, keeping the disc alive, throwing shorter passes, throwing high percentage passes a lot of the time, and then obviously as a presence in the deep space on offense or defense. So yeah, she is a player who grew a lot last season, and excited to see what this season looks like for her.
Another look at the DC offense, as Raleigh really going to have to start getting some quick breaks if they're going to put any kind of pressure on DC down the stretch.
Yep, Jenny Way lurking in the deep space.
She's a good one to have lurking. And that one pops up over the head, so it will be a free turnover for Raleigh. The trouble is they got a large part of the field to have to go. Connolly picks up. She wants to go deep right away. The look's not there. She resets to Shakuski instead. Oh, and then miscommunication on the reset. Connolly was moving away from the space right at the worst time. No mark on Trope. No defender really near Wallace either. Easy break for DC.
I think personally, that's one of my favorite turnovers as a defensive coach is if we see the handler fake one way, cut the other, see the thrower throw that first look. That's a sign that your defense is doing well. The offense is thinking a lot about what you're doing as a defender, and they're less focused on, what am I focused on? What am I hoping to cut for my teammate? They're more reacting to what they think is coming from the defense. So I think DC has a lot to be excited about with generating one of those turnovers and clinical efficiency on the goal line afterwards.
That's so interesting, Saul, because as a player who is always on the offensive side, I always think of those, mentally from the offensive side of like, oh, who made the offensive mistake there? But I've never really thought about it from the other side, that it just feels like a win for the defense that they have the offense so in their heads that they lose their reset game a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we see teams these days running a lot of small ball offense in certain cases, and that's predicated on small windows, trusting that when you make your move, you trust your thrower to read whether you're open and execute a challenging throw into a small window. And the more you can get teams out of that trusting mindset, the more you can get teams worried about that small window throw, the easier defense becomes and, the stronger position you're in as a defense.
Quick work out across midfield for Raleigh this point around. Smith muscles that backhand downfield, but not able to be reeled in.
Looks like we had Florence Brooks running out of the stack as an extra defender. May have gotten a piece on that disc. In transit.
Some nice gainers for DC as this background midfield with Gentilette.
Oh, good D from Tyler Smith there.
So close to getting the block.
And this has been a clinical possession for DC in terms of game management, in terms of clock management. This is big shot goes up.
Gentilette and reeled in the middle of the end zone. Great grab by Brooks. She's having a nice quarter.
Yep, that is film study right there for DC. That's end of game with a lead, long possession, high percentage looks. Good fill cut underneath that deep cut that ended up going up. So I think that's picture perfect from DC.
Nice point from Sammy Smalling for quarterbacking a lot of the early point as well. But a great bendy throw from Gentilette and a nice grab to punctuate the point. So it's been an opening day of much success for DC. Not so much for Raleigh, Saul. What would you be looking for at this point? I think the game feels out of reach, probably.
Certainly.
What are you looking for in these last 3.5 minutes if you're Raleigh to, first game of the year, missing some key pieces? What are you looking for to build on going forward?
I think just reward the correct cut. Get a good data point. If you have a good receiver cutting deep and you're somebody on the team who's supposed to be throwing that, let's get a good data point there. Let's reinforce that connection going forward.
So let's see what Raleigh is able to do to close this one out. To fight through what has really just been such an impressive performance from DC in this second half.
Another Raleigh receiver finds their toes on the sideline upon the reception. Really tough look there.
Yeah, just a lack of awareness. There wasn't a whole lot of defensive pressure on Gross, just lost track of the side. And smooth transition offense from DC. They just walk it right down the field and punch it in. Groom there to capitalize.
Cammie says, don't forget about me.
Now, who's forgetting about Cammie?
I think I was the one who said they were keeping her all tied up in the third quarter. I think that is the last takeaway for Shadow is, they have more to give, I think, coming away from this game. They had, a few choppy points against the force middle, a few choppy points trying to, keep converting at a high clip without sending it deep. And the more that they can access those second and third layers of sort of offensive threat and scoring, the more it's going to be hard to sort of pin them down as an opposing team.
Yeah, I mean, we're the Raleigh Radiance broadcast, so our lens has been a little Radiance focused perhaps, but I mean, apart from that second quarter, how impressed are you by how dominant DC has really been in this game against the defending champs?
Yeah, I mean, they've been fantastic. They've very rarely relied on Trope, on Cami Groom, on there are a lot of talented players on this team, and they relied on no individual today, which I think is the biggest success coming away. They've been rolling out a lot of lines without their quote-unquote big names and getting breaks late in this game. So, a full season to go, but they've come out roaring with a great showing today.
Yeah, 21 players on the game roster for DC, and I mean, it really truly feels like every single one has had an impact in this game. Really, really impressive showing from the team who I think a lot of people probably had as favored last playoff weekend, so perhaps a chip on their shoulder. And again, I mean, we discussed earlier on the club side, coming up so close to winning a club title as well. 2-minute warning goes across the clock. Disc with Lindsay Sue. Intercepted in the reset. Just a little casual there, I think, from Raleigh in the backfield. And now DC looking for a massive gainer, but that one too far even for Cami.
Good looking throw from Annalise Peters, and Cami Groom peeling off her matchup to get that backfield block. We also had Claire Trope all the way off the stack, just occupying that break space that Raleigh was trying to attack there. So, again, I think these are scouted moments from DC that are paying off big time today. We got a clock adjustment here.
Looks like we need to get 1:16 back on the clock. Disc back in play.
Oh, Claire Trope dribbling.
DC in the red zone looking for a punctuation break. And there it is at the front of the cone. Oh, just outside. Aaron McCann, the quick continue to Trope. So DC does get that extra break to cushion their lead here late in this one. Just under 40 seconds left.
And we are going to see a buzzer beater type clock situation here at the end of the fourth quarter. We've got 40 seconds here. Last throw, the game will be when the clock goes to 0. Disc has to be in the air for a, I guess, UFA style buzzer beater situation.
I mean, do you even try a buzzer beater at this point? I mean, I know the debate about the buzzer beaters and whether they're a safe play in Ultimate or not, but it feels like unnecessary risk with this kind of score.
Yeah, I mean, close watchers of the Carolina Flyers will know how I feel about that if they watch our home opener against the DC Breeze last year.
Trope with the booming pull, one of the best we've seen this game, although it does sail just out of bounds. Curse the commentator.
Yeah, it finds that gravity well on that front cone on the far side again. DC demonstrating once again their side stack defense here, just not allowing Raleigh to start with an isolation down the field. Although Raleigh does navigate it pretty well at this point.
Errant forehand from Titcomb leads to another turnover. It looks like Shadow wants to score.
Yep, Trope knows the assignment.
Trope pushing or calling for her teammates to go downfield. And a big forehand to the end zone. It's Trope who's the target, but that one's going to sail out the back. Jess O, a little bit too much muscle on that one.
Jess O said, look at what I did this offseason.
And that will be the final throw of the game, so an anticlimactic finish perhaps. But a dominant showing from DC on the road to get their PUL revenge tour started with a 16-5 win over the defending champs.
Yeah, Daniel, obviously very strong performance from DC today. I don't think we can learn too much about the Radiance from this game. Certainly, you know, they're not an invincible defending champ, but I think that we will have to tune back in for other games to really get an authentic look at what this team is going to look like by the postseason. But I think, you know, if the LT World folks are listening, they can pencil in DC at the top of their power rankings after today.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on the flip side, I mean, you know, you can say Radiance in the start of their season, and yes, they were missing some key players, but start of the season for DC as well. And I mean, you know, if this is just the starting point for them, what a terror for the rest of the league.
Agreed.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Excellent to get the PUL back underway. We hope you enjoyed it. Looking forward to much more Premier Ultimate League action all season long. For Saul Yannick, I've been Daniel Prentice. Thanks so much.